I got Ian Furness today, the 159th edition of the Sports Untold podcast, also on Rainier Avenue Radio.world. Ian is a prominent Seattle sports broadcaster. Ian has been a longtime host at Seattle's KGR 93.3 FM afternoon show host. He's also a member of the Seattle Kraken Broadcasting Network, and Ian has been a Seahawks broadcaster, lots of stuff, and we're gonna have a great conversation. Get back to Ian in a minute. Just want to do a little introduction. My sidekick, producer, and assistant's Olivia Coyne. Olivia just finished her first year semester at Seattle Law School, University of Washington graduate, and Olivia is still helping with this podcast and some law firm stuff despite her busy schedule. She's on a break right now, but she's been doing a great job. My podcast is now on Spotify, YouTube, Amazon, Google, iTunes, Podbean. You go to sportsuntoldpodcast.net. You can listen to the show on these outlets. Sometimes a lot of people just find my show by just Googling Sports Untold YouTube. And you can also go to plslawoffices.com. You can see my shows or list my shows on my law firm website. All right, so I've known Ian now for close to 20 years. And I have been an interviewee on Ian's show many times. I get to get Ian for the second time in the hot seat as an interviewee today, so we get to switch sides a little bit here. Ian was last on back in 2020, and I mentioned to Ian before. I mentioned to you again, Ian. I mentioned to your esteemed former broadcasting partner Lisa Woodward as well, who's been on my show. I was a solo lawyer, still am solo country lawyer, and I was helping the Save Our Sons guys, and I got some great experience just with media questions and legal analysis with Ian and Elise. And then years later, Tony Benton, who was Ian's colleague at Clear Channel or KGR, I may not have the corporate name right, started Rainier Avenue Radio and approached me to host a show at Rainier Avenue Radio. And I was like, really? Me? I thought he was joking around. So anyhow, I've been doing this for a while, still keep the affiliation with Rainier Radio. And I just want to mention, Stan, I don't think I ever would have gone this podcasting round. Not that I have a million listeners or anything, but it's just been fun. If Ian and Elise didn't give me that experience of interviewing years ago. So I just, there's a little story there, and Ian played a role in why I'm doing this little venture today. So I had to
Yeah,
mention that.
I kind
And
of I kind of wish we hadn't gone down that road because, well, not down that road, but just I mean, it is wild. Yeah, 19. I met you 19 and a half years ago. It sounds like yeah, because that's when I got to KJR. But yeah, through the Save Our Sonics, which means we were losing our basketball team
I
in the
know.
process, unfortunately. But you know my mother as well, so maybe we would have been connected later on down the road.
That's a good point. Carol's a great lady. I met your
Yeah,
mom in the legal community
yeah.
years ago. So I had you on in May of 2020, and you're on the 76th edition of the Sports Untold podcast. So I'm going to try to not ask the same questions that I asked last time. Try to mix it up with some new questions. But Ian's covered about every sport imaginable. He's been a sports radio host, not just in Seattle, but also in Salt Lake City and Portland. The son of a broadcaster, the grandson, Ian's grandfather was a hockey player. He's the father of a former college football player. Ian's mother, I believe, was a figure skater. So sports have been a big part of Ian and his family. And we're just kind of fun. Get your thoughts and range of broadcasting issues, sports issues. So thank you for coming back. 159th edition of the Sports Untold podcast, also right near radio.
Yeah, I appreciate being here. Thank you, Paul. It's great to see you again.
Always fun, Ian. Always fun. So here's my first question. A lot of us really enjoy the crosstalk segment you have with Softy and Dick Fain, and you and Jessamine are involved in it, and it's always fun. Have you guys ever talked about expanding that crosstalk segment, turning into maybe a half hour show with you and Softy?
There was mention a couple times of it, and there has been over the years. But I think he does afternoon drive show that starts at 3, and I think with my schedule with the Kraken, since I've been at KJR, I've almost always been doing something else. I mean KJR people always ask me, is it a part-time? It's a full-time job. I do a radio show Monday through Friday. There's prep involved. It's a full-time job, but I'm a little unique at our radio station because I've always been doing something else, and that's kind of always been the agreement that I can do. I've always enjoyed television. You mentioned my father was, he was in TV news. My first jobs were in TV news, behind the scenes before I went in front of the camera, and for me, it's important to be able to do both radio and TV. And, so expanding the show past where it is right now would be a challenge. It's been 3 hours on a few occasions, when we've had turnover at the station and, things like that. But I think between Softy's, afternoon drive slot and my schedule, probably not. And you know what, honestly, Paul, we do it for 7 or 8 minutes, 9 minutes, whatever it might be, with Softy and myself, and it works. It's fine. I think if we expanded it past that, I'm not sure if it would have that same impact. I think people are always looking, that are old time sports radio listeners in our town. They may be looking for a reincarnation of Graz and Gas.
I was just thinking about
And
that. Yeah.
yeah, and that's just, what, those guys were unique. They're the goats, man. They started everything, and they had a unique relationship, and it worked well. Softy and I are good friends. Like, we've been friends. Really, he's probably maybe the first friend I had at the station. Guy, we meet people, and there's a difference between colleagues and friends. But I consider Dave a friend, and it works with us in that short little segment. I'm not sure if it would work for an hour or more.
Okay. Well, a lot of us enjoy it. It's always
Yeah.
fun. And when 250 or so hits, I try to turn you guys on as much as I can.
Perfect.
So
Yeah,
it's always
yeah.
good.
It's
So
supposed to be at 2:45, but we're never on time, so that's also part of the
gotcha.
problem. But
Gotcha.
yeah,
Turn on when I can. Yeah. Ian, I wanted to ask this question, and I'm not going to ask you a question, give your opinion on this issue, but here's how I'm going to package this question. So the Supreme Court's arguing a major sports case today on transgender athletes.
Mhm.
I'm not going to ask your opinion on it, Ian, but is it a subject matter that you want to get into on sports radio, or something you figure let the political shows handle addressing?
Yeah, we've more or less over the years, unless it's just something, that's an overwhelming topic in terms of interest to our audience, we try to avoid that
Hmm.
type of topic. I find that particular topic fascinating on a lot of levels, and I think, I mean, and I try to put myself in the seat of a parent, as well. My daughter played soccer, ran cross country, played fast pitch, all through her youth and high school and stuff. And so, I always kind of look at it like, wow, what would happen? How would I feel if, say, she was playing? I don't even know so much against somebody, because she was always involved in team sport. Cross country, I guess, not so much as a
Yeah,
team sport, but it's an individual. I mean, she ran for a Tahoma, which was, and still probably is, the best girls cross country team in the state and program. They had 100 kids in it. It's amazing. I mean, her competition, I don't think I would have worried about a transgender athlete. I just worry about the fact there's like 15 girls that were all qualifying for state, and only six of them could make it. That's how good their
right,
program was,
right,
right? So,
right.
but how would I handle it? And I've kind of gone back and forth on the issue, but yeah, for us in our world, it's the payoff isn't enough, right? Because you're
Yeah,
gonna you're
yeah,
gonna split your audience. It's one thing if you're splitting your audience with, sports opinions and takes, right? That's one thing. If you split your audience with something that's, has political, emotional, vibes to it, I think you're doing yourself a disservice. You're going to hurt yourself, because you're going to lose part of your audience. We live in a day and age, Paul, this. We live in a day and age now we can't have any kind of conversations about topics like that without, dividing, and without alienating, and without the acrimony that's involved with it. And that's unfortunate, because I think there is a topic and a discussion to be had about that particular situation, and what the courts decide. And it feels, and it's either you're right or I'm right, and there's no in between, and there's no
right,
discussion, there's no
right,
dialogue. And
right.
especially with that particular topic, like, that's one that's, boy, that's one that it's a yes or no. It's me or you. It's as simple as that. And so I just don't think there's a payoff for it for us. And really, frankly, in our format on our station, it just isn't something people are. If we had people texting in every day and saying, "Hey, why don't you guys tackle the transgender issue?" Well, then we probably have to tackle but it's just not of an interest. People
Yeah.
want, we play the hits. I always say that with sports radio, we play the hits. And it's like, if you listen to, a radio station, a music station these days, they play the hits. They play Taylor Swift, right? We play Taylor Swift on sports radio. That's what we do.
Well, you can tell I asked the question. I packaged the question kind of a different kind of way today, but I still want to ask you something
Yeah,
about it.
absolutely.
It's interesting. There's two subject matters I find, Ian, that can ruin a Thanksgiving or ruin a dinner party. The transgender sports issue and the Israel issue. Those are
Yeah.
two issues that
Yeah.
it's just, earthquakes seem to
I think you might be
anyway.
able to add some Molly daycare to it as well these
Yeah, they're
days. So,
exactly. It's another
right.
one. Right, right,
Yeah.
right.
I
So
do have an
so
opinion on that one. I always wonder, like, how come I paid so much for childcare if the state's funding it to that level? So,
there, yeah, well, there's a way to look at that. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
right.
Ian, I've asked this question, and this is a little. I want you to grade this question. Give me a blunt grade on it after you ask the question.
Okay.
But I've been asked this question a few guests since last year, and you were born in 1965, so you were born when LBJ was president. I'm not going to ask you who your favorite president is, but if you could have a sports-only conversation with a president in your lifetime, beginning with LBJ through Trump. Which president would you interview for a sports only conversation of all the
Uh,
presidents in your lifetime?
I mean, it's Barack Obama, and it's not even close. I don't think that I mean, I think he of all of them would be, I think Bush would be two, but I think Barack Obama would be one. And I think because it would be a legitimate discussion. It would be like he's a Chicago guy. It's in your blood, right? And yeah, Barack Obama, not even a hesitation there. It
Your
would be
your good
genuine. It would be genuine, I think, with him.
your good friend Juan Cotto said Reagan the other day. Juan said he'd like to get Reagan on his sports movie, The Gipper, getting him on old football. Everyone has different. There's no right or wrong answer. Everyone
No
has
right
their
or wrong answer, but
yeah,
there's no right or wrong, but
no right or answer.
Juan's
Yeah.
wrong, but that's fine. Listen, I've known him since 1979. Juan's been wrong a lot, and he's wrong there too, so that's fine.
Well, Juan actually had a question for me about. Let me get it. I don't know if I'm going to get in trouble asking this, but something about. I'm still going to ask it, but why you
Okay.
got in detention one day at O'Day, and there was another question about which teacher you like better. Let me see here, just a
Okay.
second here. I didn't write it down, but I was just reminded of it. Give me one moment. His question is, and here I'm delaying the interview with this getting up.
No, that's fine.
Just a second here. Juan wanted to ask. Oh gosh, let me
He's
boot it up. Let me boot it. I may boot it up later.
all
Let
right.
me boot it up later.
I'll answer the first one if you can find the second one. The
Okay.
detention, if I only had one day, that would have been awesome. That would have been fantastic. That would have been a 1 day sentence. It was an extensive period of detention. I had some
It was your first Saturday detention. That was his question. What
my
what did you
first
get your
one.
first, your first Saturday detention? That was his questions.
I don't know
Um,
what the first one was for, but I know
yeah,
that there are a lot.
yeah.
O'Day is a pretty strict school, Paul. Like you can't mess around. I might not have been the best kid all the time in high school. My
Either
mom
was I.
yeah, my mom will tell you that. Yeah, I did I think I set a record at one point. We had it like man, I think it was fall of senior year. We were there every weekend for a
Okay.
while. But we had it. Here's what I know what he set me up for. We tried it. There's kind of like a tradition at O'Day, and it's kind of an untold tradition. Not everybody
Yeah.
followed it, but at the end of the junior year, the juniors turning into seniors would kind of oversee, kind of throwing a little bit of a party.
Yeah.
And for parties for us back in those days, where you get a keg of Rainier beer and you go to the Arboretum, and there's a
Right.
couple spots in the Arboretum where
Right.
all the Catholic kids, and for us it was O'Day, Holy Names, some Forest Ridge girls would come. We were pretty close with a lot of the Blanchette kids too, back then. So we would have just a big blowout, and times were different then.
Yeah.
As a parent now, I would be appalled at my kids doing something like this. But we were at the forefront. I won't name the other guys involved, not fair to them, but we were at the forefront junior year going into senior year of doing that. And yeah, so we got caught by the I we put up little flyers and are handing them out at Holy Names, and they found their way into the hands of someone at church on the Sunday at Saint at the cathedral.
Okay.
And yeah, next thing you know, we're taking finals on Monday, and brother, I think it was brother. It wasn't Patitucci. I think brother Lackey or one of the brothers came in, the Irish Christian brothers, and he starts reading off. And if you are blank, 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 after your finals, report to brother Arndt's office. He was a principal, and
Okay.
as soon as they said that, like I like whoa, and like two of the guys from my class, we looked at each other, oh, we're in trouble. We're in big trouble. So we had to do some community service, aka Saturday detention, to get ourselves back into O'Day. I just said whatever, man. I'll go to Blanchette my senior year, and my mom said no, you'll go to you'll go to Franklin High School. And I said, okay, I'm in. I'll do the detention. So here we are. But thanks, Juan. I appreciate you, buddy. I love you for that
Well,
one.
he wanted to know, would you rather sit in a Spanish class with Brother Patici or a Latin class with Brother Lackey? That was one of those questions too.
Patitucci or Lackey? Well, Brother
Yeah.
Lackey was Latin slash chemistry,
Okay.
and Patitucci was Spanish. I never had Patitucci. I liked him though. He ended up going,
Okay.
he ended up leaving the Irish Christian Brotherhood. He went to Othello High School. It was a long time,
Okay.
really good basketball coach. Lackey was this tall, thin, pretty well built, like just like imposing guy. Had
Okay.
like a gray crew cut, deep voice. I had him for chemistry. I never had him for Latin. I took French, didn't do well. But Lackey, they were both characters. Brother Lackey would always read the Daily Bulletin. Like I had
Okay.
him for homeroom, but they would post the bulletin up. I don't know if people even do that anymore in schools, but they post the bulletin up on the chalkboard, and if you went and read it before he read it out loud to the class, he'd give you a boot to the back of the buttock, like he'd just knock you into the wall, which he did to me a couple times. He was a treat. Times were different back then, Paul. You could crack a guy across the head or whatever if you were an Irish Christian brother and you were in
Yeah.
Seattle at O'Day. But
Different era. Well, you
yeah,
mentioned the Arboretum, Ethan. Ian, I will do an Alford plea where you accept punishment but don't admit guilt to participate in similar activities at View Ranch
yes,
and
thank
Walrus
you. I I,
Playfields, the
I
Roosevelt
I
crowd.
appreciate
So,
that. Listen, I was guilty as charged all more
okay,
often than not in
okay.
high school. So yeah, the detentions were well deserved. Like I said, if I as a parent now, if my kids were involved in such a thing, I'd be appalled.
I'll accept punishment without formally admitting anything.
Yeah,
That's
I think we're well past the time limit there, so
there
we're
you go,
good.
exactly.
Yeah,
Ian, funny. You handled Juan's I questions very well. Ian, let's talk about the success of the Indiana Hoosiers in football this year.
yeah.
It's quite a story. I mean, Indiana was never known as much of a football program. Could you make a case that this is the biggest American sports story so far of the 2020s, the Indiana football team success?
Uh, yeah, I guess I'm trying to think what other contenders would be out there, but it's up there. I just, I mean, if they win the national championship, it'll be, it's interesting because it's a 2-year run, because last year they were in the playoffs too, obviously, and with a different quarterback, but this year they've taken that next step. Kurt Signetti, their coach, is remarkable. I think what they've done in today's day and age of college football is also prove that, if you spend and if you hire the right coach, you can compete and you can win. And yeah, that was a long time for people that are, I mean, it's funny because they've been always known as a basketball school, and yet basketball wise, they haven't been very good by their standards for a long time. And, I mean, the days of Bobby Knight are long gone. And so, the Hoosiers, their football program it's pretty remarkable. Signetti's an incredible coach. They brought guys in. I don't know. College football is such a different place now, Paul. You know that it's just in a different world. We have this place now where, you can literally buy a team every year. Now, the fact that they've done this 2 years in a row is pretty fun to watch. I'd say it's up there. I don't know. I'm always bad at this. Like, like what are the bigger stories? What are the stories out there? I mean, there's some pretty good ones. What Shohei Ohtani's done, and Cal here last year, and things. But yeah, I would say that's right up there with one of the best ones, and just most incredible ones. Because 2 years ago, if you would have said, "Hey, Indiana's going to be in the college football championship game and have a 2-year run like they've had," nobody would believe you. Like just nobody would believe you. Say, okay, whatever. Let's see what the odds are of that, and go run as fast as you can to a casino and put money down, because it would just never happen.
For years, Ian, things have changed the last couple years. I kind of compared Indiana football to Washington basketball. Washington basketball's had a few good years, but never really sustained itself into a
Yeah.
program that's regularly been a good basketball program. So I don't know. I always had that little funny comparison to Indiana football and Washington basketball.
Yeah, I could almost see that. I mean,
Yeah.
should be better in a big conference, has the ability to be better. I mean, Washington basketball is a weird one too, though, because, forever we had so much great talent coming out of this state. We've taken a step back. The state has. We haven't had. I was having this conversation. My son played basketball in high school as well as college as football, but he played.
Right.
He was a big AAU kid, and I say that people always have this kind of negative kind of like association with AU. For him, it was just playing basketball a lot. Like he loved the game, played a lot. But when he played, he was in the same class as Paul Banchero and that group, Nolan Hickman and some of those guys. That was kind of the last great class in Washington, the high school class of 2021. It's dipped a little bit since then. I'm not sure why, but we've always been such a great basketball state in terms of the high school and the AAU level. Washington should always be able to get the best high school players in the state, but we just talked about Indiana basketball. That's no longer the case.
Right,
You
right.
guys can get paid to go somewhere else, and Zoom Diallo is like the one guy that kind of comes to mind. And didn't he go to prep school somewhere else his last year before he came to Washington? So yeah, those days are kind of long gone, it feels like.
I don't think I asked this question last time you were on nearly 6 years ago, but I asked you a similar question about the living sports figure you most want to spend time with, living sports figure, which we're going to go into that in a minute again. But I want to ask you, who's a deceased sports figure in history? Someone who's no longer with us, you would have loved to have spent time with and interviewed. It could be a commissioner or a player, someone in the sports world. Pick one, a deceased person you would have loved to have spent time with.
Well, I'd give you two probably. One would be on a serious side, probably Jackie Robinson. Just, what you went through, why you did it, how you persevered, how you were able to, have the wherewithal to do what you did, to play the game, to break down that barrier and deal with not just fans and other teams, but internally with your own team. I'm sure there was a lot of issues that really have gone untold. I would, I mean, he to me is probably the single most important, figure in terms of that I can think of in our history. And then on a fun side, Babe Ruth, because like I'm still a degenerate and wouldn't mind going out and having a few pops with Babe Ruth and having a night out. That'd be kind of fun. Let's go. Let's let's drink some beer, have some wine, eat some bad food, and raise hell. Let's go.
Love it, love it. So, I remember you had a very interesting answer. I asked you back in May of 2020. Remember that was during the tough those tough pandemic days.
Yeah,
Who's a living sports figure you love to spend time with? You had a really interesting answer. You said Russell Wilson, but you had the caveat as long as he would open up to me. I think you mentioned Russell Wilson. It was a very interesting answer.
yeah.
And my question is, nearly 6 years later, is Russell Wilson still the living sports figure you would most want to interview and spend time with? And as part of that question, do you feel like you know more about him now, nearly 6 years later?
The answer would probably be no, to spend time with him. I spent not a lot of time with him by any means. I think there's a lot of guys in the media that portray themselves as, there's a jock sniffing mentality that's kind of creeped into our business over the years. And I always try to stop short of that if I possibly can, even though, when I did the Seahawks and covered them for years with Fox 13 and we were on the road with them every week. I had the opportunity to do a lot of one-on-ones because we're their TV partner with these guys. And so I did get to talk to these guys on and off the air a little bit more than some media members did. And, by and large, they all have their own stories. They all have their own challenges. Russ just became such an artificial figure over the years. And I tell people this all the time, and listen, we all do, but he changed. Like he just changed. And, we can connect the dots as to when. I mean, it's pretty obvious that, team Russell Wilson, when he paired up with Sierra, became different. It became about the brand. It became about, Russ as a whole and combining their two careers and he became he wanted to be the celebrity quarterback and everything was kind of based on that to the point of I mean that's why he's not here anymore. Like that's why John Schneider got rid of him. He tried to get John and Pete fired. I know that for a fact. I've talked about it on the air. He tried to get them fired. And he just something happened there. It's unfortunate because in his prime he was a really good quarterback, borderline Hall of Fame, probably not, but right up there. But there's just too much fake, and maybe someday, he'll lighten up. Maybe someday we'll see the real Russell Wilson because I think there's a good person in there. And I say that because I don't think he's showing that these days because he's so self-centered. Like I said, when you try to get not just Pete and John fired, but staff members inside the Virginia Mason Athletic Center turfed, people that are just hardworking folks, when he tries to replace them with his people, that's not a good person in my mind. But I know there's a good person in there because the Children's Hospital stuff is real. Like that's real. Like that was something, you know, at the end, too many cameras, too many photo ops. But I know having, my son spent some time out there when he was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, and I know what the hospital staff thought of Russ and thinks of Russ. So, like I said, there's a good person in there. I just need to get him back out at some point. So, yeah, I don't, I'm done with my Russell Wilson days. I spent enough time with him over the years. I'm good. He was an interesting dude, man. Of all the guys I've interviewed over the years, I always tried to, crack the nut a little bit. I'd ask him questions I didn't think he could give me the standard Russell Wilson cliche answers or the scripted answers that he had memorized. And a couple times I got him to do that, but yeah, I was just too. An interesting fella.
So January 26th, who would be the living sports figure you'd most want to interview or spend time with?
Mm, this is probably just because I'm old and jaded. I've just done interviewed so many guys over the years. No one really jumps out, Paul, if I'm being honest. Like nobody like, wow, I really want to talk to that person. If it was off the record, having lunch or having a beer and just sitting around, where we could have a real conversation, maybe Tiger, you
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
probably Tiger Woods. I think he would be right up there. I think again, like broke down some barriers, went through stuff that most, athletes don't, center of the universe. I mean, he was, in a lot of ways, Tiger was Muhammad Ali of our generation, but without, I mean, Tiger was often criticized because he didn't take a hard enough stand on political or racial issues, things like that. But that wasn't his thing. Like he had to endure some issues, but that wasn't his thing. His job was he wanted to win golf tournaments, try to break Jack's record,
Not
work
everybody's an activist,
right. Not, and you don't
Yeah,
have to be an
yeah,
activist,
yeah,
like it's funny
yeah.
because nowadays if you are one and you're in the public eye, it opens you up for massive criticism. Do you lose endorsements over it? Things like that. If you're not, then you're criticized for not using your platform along the way. So it's kind of a lose-lose situation. But I think Tiger, just off the top of my head, Tiger would be the guy that would come to mind.
Would one of the commissioners interest you, Ian? Would you getting deep with Manfred or Gary Bettman? Would that interest you?
No, Manfred hates baseball, so I don't like him. Gary Bettman, I think Gary Bettman's fascinating because he's done a terrific job with the NHL and a better job than I think he ever gets credit for. The league is like baseball and hockey are very similar in my mind. They're very regionalized, right? Like you don't care about the Philadelphia Phillies and what they're doing, and you don't care about the Philadelphia Flyers, for example. If you care about the Kraken and the Mariners, and that's little pockets here. So they both Manfred and Bettman have similar challenges, but Gary Bettman has grown the league and the league revenue and the value of franchises and signed contracts with networks and bit the bullet. Even had he did something most commissioners don't do. He would never admit this, but I think he checked the ego at the door. He went back to ESPN after they got away from ESPN and went strictly to networks that weren't ESPN for a long time. And so we got to go back. And ESPN's kind of an evil empire in a lot of our minds, but you need to you need to associate yourself. Remember last summer, ESPN's out of the baseball business. Well, they're kind of back in it now too, right? And I appreciate Bettman doing that. Goodell, I think, is just a puppet for a handful of owners that have power in the in sports. And I think Adam Silver is the biggest zero that we've seen. As I mean, we think Rob Manfred's a zero and doesn't like baseball. Somebody explain to me who and what Adam Silver is, because as much as this city, and rightfully so, uh, not on board with anything the late David Stern was about. And David Stern, he is culpable. He is partially responsible for our basketball team not being here anymore. There's no doubt. And if he wanted it really to stay here, it would have stayed, aka what happened, what happened in Sacramento. Uh, the one thing with Stern that I would give him credit for is that David Stern had juice. Like even if you had strong owners in the NBA, and they did and still do, but he wouldn't let, say, Mark Cuban or the Buss family tell him what to do. David Stern ran that league. And you always hear
Right.
the commissioner works for the owners. Sure, And technically they do. And in Goodell's case, absolutely. Goodell works for the owners. He works for Jerry Jones, Robert Kraft, and whoever else wants to run the show on that particular day. But make no mistake, David Stern ran the NBA. You know that, Paul, as well as anybody because you were involved with it. And I did respect Stern in later years, just from that standpoint. I certainly don't respect what he did to our city. I'll always hold that against him. I think Adam Silver came in and he's just I just think he's a zero, and I think obviously that's part of me being bitter with what's going on here or not going on here. But, David Stern would never come out and say, we're going to, first of all, he wouldn't come out for two prior years and say, you know, expansion is something we haven't discussed it. We're not talking about it. Well, you have discussed it. Ownerships have, potential owners have been in New York talking to you, Adam. Stop lying. Like that has happened. I know that for a fact. We all know that for a fact. And then he wouldn't come out and say, well, we're going to explore expansion and figure something out in 2026. Well, what kind of open-ended answer is that? David Stern would come out and say, we're going to decide in 2026 whether we're going to expand in the near future or not. Period. End of story. That's what he would say. Instead, Silver's like, I'm going to be wishy-washy about it, which basically opens up the possibility of not making a decision, or the decision is we're going to push it down the road and kick the can down the road for 3 or 4 more years. And I just don't have any respect for how he does his business day to day.
I got another CLNBA question for you coming up a little later.
Okay.
One more Russell Wilson question. You alluded to it a couple minutes ago. Do you think Russell's hurt his Hall of Fame chances with his play last 3 or 4 years?
Yes. 100%. Yeah. Yeah. I think when he left Seattle, he was a borderline Hall of Famer. I don't think he's anything close. I don't think he's close to it right now. He one-time Super Bowl win, one-time Super Bowl loss. A lot of his Pro Bowls were as an alternate, like it's, yeah, you're a Pro Bowler. Like I think he fact check me on this 7-time Pro Bowl or something like that, whatever it is. But I think 5 or 4 of those were because like 4 other guys opted out. He was second team All Pro once, if I'm not mistaken. Uh, that doesn't scream Hall of Fame. If you're a quarterback, it's hard to be a first or second team All Pro. It's really hard. There's one of those guys, right? But you got to win Super Bowls. Like Eli Manning is on the cusp. Is Eli Manning a Hall of Famer? I don't know. Maybe a couple of Super Bowls tell me that probably, right? That's sometimes, and right or wrong, that's how we judge it. Keeping in mind that the judging for the Pro Football Hall of Fame is 50 guys in a room making cases for certain players and so forth. Mike Sando represents this area, has done forever, does a great job with it. Mike's a long-time TNT writer, ESPN, now with The Athletic. And, he's got to present Mike Holmgren every year. He's got other Seahawks he's going to have to present coming up in the next few years, guys like Richard Sherman, who should be a no-brainer. But as we've found out
Pete
with
Carroll's an interesting discussion too.
Pete Carroll's a really interesting one, Paul,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
again, one Super Bowl, here's the interesting thing. There are guys in the way they changed it now too, where only the one guy gets in from the coach, builder, whatever category, makes it really hard. I mean, this year Belichick's going to be the guy. It's going to be Bill Belichick, period, and he'll get in. And so Holmgren has to wait another year. There are a number of coaches in the Pro Football Hall of Fame that don't have the resume of either Mike Holmgren or Pete Carroll. Did Pete Carroll hurt his legacy this year? It didn't help. Like it didn't help going there. He should have just walked away. Like in terms of the Hall of Fame, he wanted to coach. That's in his blood. That's in his DNA. I get that, but it certainly did not help his case at all going to the Raiders and having that record.
Tough season for Pete. Hey, Olivia's going to jump in here with a couple questions, Ian.
Yep.
My first one now, change of plans. Do you think Marshawn Lynch is a Hall of Famer?
Borderline, like borderline. I think Marshawn is a borderline Hall of Famer. I think it'll be hard. We've gone down the road a few times on the radio about this. Like he was probably the most impactful player at times for that offense that was, the best team in the league for a couple, 3 years. But, the numbers are borderline. I think he is. Marshawn made a difference. If you go back, because the question is the bigger question is, who are the Hall of Famers from that era, right? Like who you have the best defense in a generation in the Legion of Boom. You had an offense that was good enough to win a Super Bowl, and also I believe they were, a top five scoring offense a couple times, and good offense. None of the receivers are Hall of Famers. None of the offensive linemen are Hall of Famers. Russ is borderline. Marshawn, I'd like to see him get in. I think he deserves it. Sometimes you kind of look the eye test. Is a guy a Hall of Famer or not? What does the eye test tell you? Marshawn, the eye test says probably. Russ, probably not. Defensively, the only guy that is 100% first ballot no brainer is Bobby Wagner, and that's just because of the number of times he's been a first team All Pro, a second team All Pro, Super Bowl champion. Bobby Wagner's resume stacks up. He's basically, you can make an argument, his resume, he's the number three middle linebacker in the history of the game in terms of just his resume, Pro Bowls, and everything else. I mean, it's Butkus, it's Urlacher. If you want to include Ray Lewis as a middle linebacker, it's those three, and Bobby's right there. He's a first ballot Hall of Famer. Sherm's a Hall of Famer, without a doubt. Richard Sherman is. Cam, probably not. Just didn't have the All Pros.
God, he was good though.
He's great,
Yeah.
impactful player. Earl's, having a hard time getting on the final ballot, so I don't think he will. And I think end of Earl's career hurt him as well. I think that hurt him too. To me, Earl's a Hall of Famer. I would say Bobby, Richard, and Earl are all Hall of Famers. But yeah, it's hard. Football Hall of Fame is hard to get into, unless you're a coach and you're on CBS or Fox, and then it's easy because they do a big thing for you. Bill Cowher, Jimmy Johnson, but outside that, Tony Dungy, no business being in there, to be honest with you, not compared to others. But so there's a little political thing with the coaches, but from the player standpoint, yeah, Marshawn, I don't know, Olivia, I'd like to think so, but I think he's going to have a little bit of a wait to get there.
Do you think any of his media stuff in the last, I don't know, 10 years helps him at all? Just because he's so present. I feel like I see him every
Yeah,
love it.
it's wild because for a guy that never spoke to the media, in his probably after his first year or two, once he left Buffalo and got to Seattle, he had a half a season where we could talk to Marshawn, and then after that, he just tuned out, didn't want to talk to the media, felt like he got wronged with a couple things, and was this mysterious figure. And now he's everywhere. Commercials, his podcast is very popular, things like that. Marshawn's everywhere. They throw him on TV. I do laugh when people put him on TV, like live TV, and they're surprised they got to mute stuff or beep it. I mean, that's just what he is, who he is. But yeah, I think Olivia, it's probably helped him. He's front and center. He's such a great character. And then if you look at the numbers, he's right there. So I would think so. But I think the Hall of Fame committee they do their job. Baseball, I wouldn't say that. I think some guys in the Baseball Hall of Fame committee, the Baseball Writers Association of America, you got to be a member for 10 years before you get a vote. I think some of those guys are really good and take it really seriously and really look deep into it. I think others are just petty. So-and-so wouldn't do interviews with me, or I'm not going to make so-and-so a unanimous pick. That doesn't happen with the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Those guys do their homework. So I don't think that Marshawn doing something or not something is going to necessarily affect the vote, except for the fact that he's front and center more so than guys that are other borderline guys like a Frank Gore or a Fred Taylor, guys like that are running backs.
Interesting. Okay, thank you.
Hmm.
I'm taking a left turn with my other questions.
Okay.
I like to ask people their favorite sports memory.
Mm.
And I want to ask you your favorite Seattle sports memory, both as a fan and as someone who is involved in the media around it.
Well, I mean, as a fan, 79 Sonics winning the NBA title was right there. That was, I mean, I was very young when that happened, but that was, I mean, huge Sonics fan. My first team, they win the title. Awesome. Like just something I couldn't even, I mean, it's just great. It was phenomenal. So that would be there as a fan. Been lucky to cover, a lot of sports over the years. I think. Probably for me, it's just the Super Bowls and the Super Bowl runs, and working for Fox 13, and I was standing 5 yards away from the tip in the end zone with Richard Sherman. We tipped it to Malcolm Smith to get to the Rose Bowl. I was standing next to Michelle Lutka, my old coworker at Fox 13. We're standing there waiting to see what happens, and we're thinking, boy, they're gonna blow this. I mean, Colin Kaepernick and the 49ers were marching down the field, and they throw that ball to the end zone. Crabtree's there, like, oh, here we go. Nope. Tip, catch, comes down, and I'm like, wow, I can't believe that just happened. And then winning the Super Bowl, like in being on the field afterwards, doing our post game interviews. First two guys I talked to were Michael Bennett and Cliff Averill, who I got to know a little bit that year. Those guys were, they were new to the team that year. People kind of forget about that. They didn't play in 2012 when they took that little run of a couple games in the postseason. Mike and Cliff were kind of the newbies, and they had their wives on the field, confetti's falling down. That was amazing experience. I did it with a good friend of mine, Chad Bailey, another good friend of mine, Steve Schrammick. They were our photogs for Fox 13. Great guys, good friends to this day. So that was incredible to be a part of that. It was amazing. Covering a Super Bowl was something that was, those 2 years was fun. So being on the field for that, I think, we were on the field getting ready to do post game when Jermaine Kearse caught the little post play from Russ to clinch the second Super Bowl appearance. Obviously, the loss to New England, but that was crazy watching that unfold before our very eyes. So I think those would be the ones covering that jump off the top of the list. And then, being involved with the Kraken's right up there for me too. I mean, I was a hockey fan. Paul mentioned my mom was a figure skater. My grandfather played, and so getting to sit, to host the studio shows. I did the radio play-by-play their first for their first 5 games, filling in last second their first year, and then getting the chance to do TV this year in the booth with, I fill in for John Forsland, who's the best in the business for a handful of games this year. So those all rank up there for me.
As as a huge Mariner fan, I'm mildly disappointed that no Mariners events were mentioned, but I get it, kind of, years of mediocrity is tough.
Well, and for me, yeah, for me, when they were really like, I wasn't here in '01, I was in Salt Lake. So when they won 116 games, we were in Salt Lake. Watching games on TV. We were in Tri-Cities in '95 when that series, when they clinched the playoff berth in '95 and Edgar's double and all that stuff. I watched it on TV. It was a great memory, but I kind of look at, like, was I there? I wasn't there. It's awesome. And listen, I grew up a huge Mariner fan too. And so, for me, the Mariners have always kind of been the team. I haven't really covered a big game for them because I've always been involved with, like, covering football at that time of the year or hockey. So it's, when they crank things up, I'm just watching as a fan from far away. This year was fun. It was weird because all the stuff that are happening. We had a bunch of hockey broadcasts we went head to head with, so I didn't even see some of the games, to be honest with you. It was, I'm having to talk about it on the radio and after not seeing it on TV. But no, Mariners. I mean, I think the Edgar double would be right up there. I just remember watching it on a small TV in Tri Cities, so it was a little bit different.
That's fair. Okay, I'll accept it. I'm less mad.
Thank you.
Libby may have you jump back in a little later. Um, Favorite sports movie?
Wow. I mean, probably Hoosiers, I guess, would be it. Slapshot number two. Hoosiers one, Slapshot two. Let me think. I think Friday Night Lights is a great movie. I mean, the series was fun too, but Friday Night Lights, great movie. I think I'd put that up there too. I think those are the three that would just jump out.
Field of Dreams, I liked a lot.
Yeah, Field of Dreams, good. Bull Durham, great movie. I think Bull Durham's an awesome movie. Bull Durham I relate to because I worked in minor league hockey for a long
That's right.
time,
That's right.
so I can kind of take Bull Durham and Slapshot and put them together and say, yeah, that's the miners, man. That's what the miners are all about. And so I would put those two up there too. Like, people wouldn't put Slapshot and Bull Durham necessarily up there because they're kind of comedies as much as anything, but those are two great movies, so well done. Hoosiers is the epic one. Field of Dreams certainly good. Miracle, right? I mean, those are all. There's been some great sports movies over the years, but those are the ones that jump out to me, like the ones that, like,
I
hey, if it's
liked
on,
the
I might watch it.
documentary Murder Ball about disabled athletes. Do you ever see Murder Ball years ago?
I
It's
have,
really well done.
I have not. I have not.
It's intense.
I watched just the documentary recently on Tim Donaghy, the NBA official, on Netflix.
Oh, I gotta watch that.
Yeah, Flagrant Foul, I think it's called. It's something else because I was covering the NBA in Portland and Utah when he was officiating. In fact, I was in Portland the night that Rasheed Wallace almost killed him on the loading dock outside the Moda Center, Rose Garden out there. So yeah, it was. So that was pretty interesting because, but it's a documentary, not so much a movie. So
Forgot, but you covered the Blazers for many years too. You've done so much different stuff in the sports world. All right, and here's a Mariners. I got two Mariners questions for you, two baseball related questions here. Dan Wilson helped get the Mariners within 6 outs of our first ever World Series appearance. Has a criticism of him been a little over the top?
Yeah, I it's a great question because we talk about it. We do a segment called Molly Wop Mondays on Mondays on a radio
Yeah,
show with Chris Crawford, Nathan Bishop, and
right.
you know, I always laugh. I baseball guy. I think there's such a thing as baseball guy. Baseball guy with his numbers and his analytics and things like that will tell you that Dan Wilson doesn't do a great job managing in game. They put together a heck of a roster. How much did Dan have to do? He made some mistakes in the playoffs. I mean, I think, but they're all, we're looking back and hindsight's 2020. It's like a play call in football, right? Baseball, you have a little bit more time to decide. Am I going to take the pitcher out? Am I going to stay with my gut? Am I going to go by the numbers? You know, was he over his skis at times? It kind of appeared to be that way, but I don't know. I mean, they're one game away, one inning away, one, big rally. Like, they were right there to go to the World Series. So it's hard to say too much negative about Dan, but like I said, I think if you ask like a true baseball guy, we have these guys in every sport. There's all 22 guy in football. There's baseball and analytics guy. Tell me about the war and things like that. Hockey's got their own analytics people, and then it's NBA's turning that route too. Soccer's got its formation guy that wants to tell you about their formations and how it's wrong. And Schmetzer doesn't know what he's doing; he just wins. Maybe Schmetzer's Dan Wilson, right? They just win. Maybe they just win the games. But it was a heck of a team. He had a hell of a pitching staff. So I don't know how much. We always think that the baseball manager doesn't do as much as coaches in other sports. And yet, when things don't go well, we immediately point to the manager and say it's their fault. So there's a little hypocrisy there involved too.
Yeah, yeah. All right. Would you like to see the baseball stadium either named after Slade Gordon or have some like wing
Mm,
named after Slade? Slade played a big role in saving baseball in Seattle a couple
yeah,
times. Would you like to see him recognized with some another with the Seattle baseball stadium?
I think Slade Gordon should be recognized. How that is, I'm not sure. Maybe it's like, listen, you're not going to put the big statue in front of T-Mobile Park, but maybe there should be some sort of recognition, small statue, what have you. I mean, we have Dave Niehaus statue in center field. Yeah, Slade Gordon deserves a ton of credit, and I think as the years go on, I think it's forgotten over that period of time, the role that he played in that. Slade was a strong proponent of sports in our state and in our region, our area. We don't have that same support these days. I mean, I just said we don't get political, but let's get political. We don't have that same support. We don't. We certainly didn't have it from the Seattle City Council in 2008. I know just the only time we have that type of support now for sports and pro sports. And listen, without getting the debate about building stadiums, we don't have to worry about that happening anytime soon. We're good with the three we have, the arena and the two stadiums. But the only time politicians these days put their neck on the line for sports, pro sports specifically, is when it benefits them. When they can say, "Yeah, I'm bringing back the Sonics," or dipstick Bruce Harrell walks up there and he's got the basketball in his hand, going, "Ah, here we are." No, man, that's not how it works, fella. Like it's like, and and the new mayor, she does the same. She's like, yeah, she's telling my buddy Chris Daniels and others, yeah, I'm going to do what I can to bring back the NBA. Well, you have nothing to do with it, so stop it. Slade Gordon did have something to do with it, and he did, get his feet or did get his hands dirty and did kind of work hard. I think that's a great. I hadn't thought of that in a while, Paul, but I think that's a great sentiment. And I think the Mariners. I think John Stanton. I mean, he knows that. That should be something that he takes in. Kevin Martinez is their president. He knows Slade Gordon. I think those guys all should be involved with that.
I think John Stanton and Slade were friends too. So yeah,
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 yeah, and
yeah.
and I think I think Slade should be recognized. I
I
I
do too.
100% agree.
I
100%
do.
agree.
Either the
Yeah,
stadium name or some pavilion or some wing of the stadium named after him, something like that. Yeah.
yeah, I agree. I agree.
Ian, you kind of maybe read my mind in this question. So I've listened to you listened to you on KJR many times over the years, and I'm a Furness listener. Let's turn you on when I can. As a working class lawyer, sometimes I can't listen to you because I have to do
I get
both. But
it.
yeah.
Middle of the day. Yeah,
So
I hope you're busy.
well, yeah, I'm busy. Being busy doesn't mean you're doing as well as you want, but anyhow. Um, so um, you were critical of for Mayor Harrell, our recent mayor. You didn't like it that he voted to, as a city council member, to let the Sonics go in 2008, although he was
Right.
a unanimous vote.
Yeah.
You were frustrated when he made that joke about the Sonics coming
Yeah.
back. It
Yeah.
didn't happen. So you've definitely expressed some thoughts about former Mayor Harrell, and the Sonics issue that frustrates you. But looking at Mayor Harrell, former UW athlete, definitely a basketball fan, definitely a sports fan. Now with Katie Wilson as mayor,
Mhm.
are you more comfortable with Bruce Harrell on the Sonics NBA issue than our new mayor, Katie Wilson?
Yeah,
Okay,
but that just makes him the tallest short person. That's all. I
okay,
mean, it's like
okay,
choose
okay,
between two evils. But yeah, I
okay,
don't think Bruce Harrell. Listen, like I said, I don't think in today's day and age that the mayor has any juice to bring a team to town. That
okay,
has he has nothing. He or she has nothing to do with it. Like I said,
okay.
I think they use it as a pawn. They can rally some support. Hey, look at me! I want to bring the Sonics back and all of that. Bruce, you had plenty of opportunities. You had opportunities to help Key Arena. Don't insult any of our intelligence. Yeah, you're an ex-athlete at UW. That's great. That was so low on your priority list. I don't know what was on your priority list looking at our city right now and how it's being run. I don't know what's on her priority list. I do. We all do. So yeah, I think we have some issues. I think we have some massive issues with leadership in this city. Where's Norm Rice when we need him, right? I mean, come on. It's a sad state. I mean, I'll just go down the road for a second. I mean, don't use sports as a pawn. Don't use sports as a rallying cry to help you politically because you don't have the ability. You have the ability sometimes to keep teams here, but in terms of bringing teams here, you don't have billions of dollars. That's up to the ownership that basically most of the ownership, included with the current Kraken and whoever else they have as investors. It's up to them and it's up to the NBA. It has nothing to do with a political leader downtown Seattle.
To be fair though, Ian, you don't have any information. The former mayor Bruce Harrell did anything to try to stop the NBA from
No,
owning
no,
Seattle.
no,
Okay,
no, 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 no.
yeah,
I just don't I think, listen, anybody that was remotely involved with city politics in 2008, I've got no time for you. Period. End of
okay.
story. You were part of the problem, not the solution. You're part of the reason the team's not here. We never got to hear the verdict from Judge Marcia Peckman. I think, you yourself have told me you kind of believe she would have ruled in favor of the city, right?
I
So,
do, I do.
yeah, yeah. So, I mean, it's unfortunate because we never had that opportunity.
I'm gonna get a couple more questions and I'll let you go.
Okay.
Um, I'm going to throw out three things about the Kraken that have kind of surprised me, and I want you
Sure.
to mention what you see as a surprise or two in the Kraken's nearly 5 years of existence. The first surprise is I think the Kraken nickname has really taken off. I think a lot
Yeah.
of fans really love that nickname. It's grown on me. Number two, I have found getting to Climate Pledge Arena to be a little less worse than I thought.
Yeah.
Not perfect. I usually take the bus, but I can make it work. And the third surprise for me personally, which I think other fans have, is I really want to get the Sonics back in, you know that. But I think I miss the Sonics a little less having the Kraken in Seattle. So those are three things that surprised me about having the Kraken here. How about you? Anything about the Kraken's nearly 5 years? You cover them. You're a hockey fan,
Yeah, I mean, in fair and to be transparent, I work for them. I get a
right?
paycheck from them. So yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah. I think all those are true. The Kraken name, I wasn't loving it when it first came out, but I think
yeah.
it definitely has taken hold. The logo, I mean, you can see it. The logo is great.
That's right. That's right.
They've done a terrific job with everything except for the third jersey. Third jersey looks good this year. You just can't see the
Yeah,
numbers, and as someone has to call play by
I
play
got a
on,
few Kraken bobbleheads up here, but
yeah. I mean, I think that's fine. The Yeah, I can't speak necessarily to getting to and from the arena because I get there 3 hours before a game. So it's for me, and I leave an hour after. So I don't really deal with the traffic that others have to do. I have a lot of friends, though. They all, it's Seattle. Our mass transportation, just in the region, I'll say Seattle, but Seattle, Bellevue, Tacoma, Everett, etc. We all know mass transportation here is awful. It just isn't very good. It's not convenient. Especially if you don't live in downtown proper. If you don't live in the Seattle city limits, it's really challenging. And yet, I found that a lot of people I know that are, I live out in Maple Valley. That's kind of the woods. That's deep, right? I know everybody that I know, and I got a lot of friends that are Kraken fans. They found a way, and they have their own system. And frankly, it's the same thing for T-Mobile Park or Lumen Field because there's very limited parking at those two places based on the size of the stadium, right? Like you're not parking as a general fan unless you're in a suite that night or something like that. You're not parking in the T-Mobile garage. And if you're a Seahawk fan, 90% of you are not parking in the Lumen Field garage. So that starts to limit things, right? It's very similar to what we have at Climate Pledge. And yet people find a way. They find a way to get there. They know where they can park. They found their little spot over the years. And I think you're right. I think it's taken hold. I think it's been okay. I've heard people that do the monorail thing for Climate Pledge, and they said it's fine. Like they have no problem with it. It's actually kind of fun. It's kind of turned into a thing. So there's that. And then as far as missing the Sonics, yeah, I think there's some that just are never going to be hockey fans, but there's a lot of people that aren't basketball fans. So it fills a gap in the winter months with a sport. They just need to be, Kraken need to get to the playoffs again because we saw what this town was like 3 years ago when they went to the postseason. It was unbelievable. We turned into a hockey town for 3 weeks. It was awesome, and I think we can do that again. I think this team's got a really good chance to make the postseason. They're not a true probably top level team. I mean, they're not in the level of Colorado or Dallas, but and maybe even Carolina, but they're good. They're pretty good. They don't have the superstar necessarily, but they're good, and I think they're going to be competitive all year, and that makes going to games fun. And it does fill a little bit of a void. I mean, my son's a huge NBA fan. I think there's a generational gap. I think it'd be interesting to see what the reaction will be and what the fan base will look like, Paul, once we get the team back and it settles in, because I think there's a lot of people our age that are Sonic, grew up with the Sonics. I think if you're 40 plus, you grew up as a Sonics fan, right? Like that was a team. If you're under the age of, if you're in that little, maybe 25 to 30-year-old, 35, 40, maybe they've been gone for so long, maybe you just never connected with them. And frankly, the team was so bad for a few years at the end, it didn't matter. Maybe you weren't that fan. Maybe the younger generation, which the NBA appeals to, will be going crazy. The demographic for the games will be interesting once we see it come back. And understand this, when the NBA does come back, it's not going to be very good. Like the NHL does a really good job of, like if you look at NHL standings, everyone is, at this point, halfway through the season, at least a couple, maybe 5 games under 500. Like there's no teams with 4 or 5 wins. Like you don't have the Washington Wizards or the Utah Jazz, teams like that we have in the NBA. Unfortunately, I think the NBA, the way it's going to be structured when it comes back, it's going to be a struggle for a few years before the team here is competitive. But we'll have the NBA back. It'll be awesome. We all look forward to it. But yeah, I don't know. I think it has filled the gap for some, but maybe not all.
I miss the NBA a lot still, but
Yeah.
Kraken have helped fill that gap for me.
Yeah,
That's me.
absolutely. Absolutely.
I got one more question. I want Olivia to jump in for a moment. Olivia, give your perspective on someone who didn't really grow up with hockey, but is a 23-year-old lady in Seattle. Just kind of give us your take on the Kraken.
I might be a little bit more of a unique case just because I love sports, crave it, can't wait for any game pretty much to watch on TV. Um, I did kind of grow up with the Sonics. They left when I was like 6, but my dad would take me to all those games. So
Hmm.
I had something, I guess, like there was a seed planted, but I think it helped us going to the playoffs so soon after getting a team. I mean, I was super excited to get a team. I have always been interested in hockey, but I didn't have anything to
Hmm.
really look out for. I think it's been great. I love it, but it's kind of tough when they're not great.
Yeah, I mean
Always sit
it's
and watch bad teams, but
it's funny, Olivia, because I think one of the things like going to the playoffs that second year was huge for the organization. Like it was really because you got a lot of new fans on board. That was massive for the team. The problem was then the next 2 years they were not good. The next year they've kind of high expectations fell on their face, and then last year was just a disaster. And part of it was the coaching situation. I think they needed to move on from Dave Haxtell, and Bilesma was frankly just kind of over his skis. More of an old school approach, didn't embrace how the game's played now as much, and just wasn't up to the level. You see what the difference coaching makes with Lane Lambert. Getting to the playoffs is really important for all sports. We joke about it in Seattle every year. It's like most of the time with the baseball season, we get excited in February and, spring training's here, hope springs eternal, and the season starts. And then maybe they're hanging around by the All-Star break. And then by the time August gets here, all we're doing is talking about college and pro football. This year was different. Doesn't matter who the team is, you got to make the playoffs. The NFL is kind of maybe the one exception. But for the most part, for the most part, I think it's just a time that they need to get to the postseason. I think it's important for the growth of the game, and I think that's why you saw Todd Lightwicki and this team go all in. And they're paying three head coaches right now. Money is not a concern if they can try to win games. And it's a salary cap league, so there's only so much you can spend. But I think you do see that commitment to winning with the Kraken, and I think that's important to show your fan base that you are committed to winning.
Which goalie, if you could pick one goalie, Grubauer or Decord, which one do you like better?
Are we talking like Game 7, must win, all
Yeah,
that?
must win. Who do you go with? Grubauer or Decord?
Boy, today, I would probably say, just based on how he's played this year, I'd probably say Gruby. And if you would have asked me that 3 months ago, I would have said Decord, and why are you even asking me this question? It's like, like counselor, this is not a good question to ask.
That's right.
That's got to be Joey. But Phil's one of the great stories this year. He's bounced back in a massive way.
Yeah, it's a good story.
It's really cool to see. Good dude, really popular in the room. So watch, but Joey competes, man. I'll give it. And Joey's got the right mindset for a goalie, man. He got a big old ego, and he's like, let's go. And he's, it's like the relief pitcher in baseball. Like, you're gonna give up something every now and then. Like, how do you bounce back the next day? And I think both those guys have the right mindset. I give Phil all the credit, man. It's really fun to see him bounce back this year. Today, I'll say Phil. You can ask me in 2 weeks, it might be different.
This is kind of my last, not really question here, but I will confess, I got stuck coming up with a good Seahawks question for Ian, and here our team is about to
Mm.
potentially get the Super Bowl. I just couldn't come up with a good Seahawks questions. I want you to comment, throw out any comment you have about the Hawks. I know I don't have any good question for you about
No, I got
Seahawks. I
you.
can't
I
believe
got
it.
you. I think that what's amazing with what they've done
Yeah.
is they moved on from a Super Bowl winning coach. They made the tough decision. I say that would be for the most part Jody Allen, maybe a little bit of Burt Cold mixed in, but really that was Jody that said we can't do this anymore. It's Pete's had a hell of a run, kind of like Baltimore just did with John Harbaugh, but we've got to make a change. Time to move on. We've got to make a change. And when they decided to make that change and make that move, it was met with a lot of trepidation. People were like, what are you doing? Why are you keeping John? John at that point had gone through a few drafts that weren't great. But credit ownership, first and foremost, credit John Schneider second, and his hiring of Mike McDonald. They are where they should be. It's an organization that's committed to winning, period, end of story. They do things right on and off the field. Chuck Arnold, the president on the business side, does a terrific job. Go Cougs. And I just think what they do as an organization is kind of the gold standard. And I'm not surprised they are where they are. Schneider knows how to build a roster without having that second voice in Pete. And we'll never know who was drafting Christian Michael and guys like that over the years, Malik McDowell, some of those drafts they had that weren't very good. How much was that Pete? How much was that John? Just a little bit of draft slump. I don't know. But Schneider's put together an incredible roster, and Mike McDonald's a genius, an absolute genius, and was the right hire at the right time. And we'll see what they do Sunday against the 49ers. But I think no matter what happens Sunday, this team is set up to be very good for a long time.
Ian, what a great hour. You've been so generous with your time. Look forward to seeing you soon. And I really appreciate you coming back on my little podcast.